Good morning. Am I on? Yeah? Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Good morning.
Morning.
I don't know if I'm supposed to be flattered or offended that I have the first speaking spot today. After a night of lots of wine and beer, and everyone who got out of bed and is here this morning, thank you. Yeah, we're excited to have you. Who are the students in here? Can I get a show of hands, all the students? Good job being here as well, 8 in the morning. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm excited to have you guys here. A lot of what I'm going to talk about, you're going to experience if you're not already experiencing in your day-to-day. So very excited to have to be here with you this morning. We're going to talk about an acronym, IoT. What is IoT? Hold on, I'll explain it to you. But first, I just wanted to thank everyone, Fire Management Canada, for giving us the opportunity to be here. What an amazing event. The speakers yesterday, thank you as well for setting the bar really high, and everyone that's coming today is going to try and match it. So it's been an amazing conference, and I've learned a ton. And hopefully this morning can be a little bit of that for you as well. Maybe you'll have some questions that you can get answered around technology, around connectivity, around IoT. And I'm really, really excited to share with you how we see IoT and how it's going to impact the farm. But before we start, I just wanted to acknowledge the traditional and sacred lands that we have the privilege of gathering on today. We acknowledge that people are joining us from many Indigenous territories and treaty areas as you've come here. And for those attending this session, I want to acknowledge the Indigenous territories and lands on which you are living and working as well. I think it's important that we take a moment just to acknowledge that first thing today. Who is TELUS? Why did they get this telco guy to come up here and start talking? Is he going to try and sell me a cell phone? No. But if you are interested in changing your plan, I know someone you can talk to, okay? Who's TELUS? We know TELUS mostly from, hey, it's those guys with the cell phones and the critter ads, and maybe even once in a while a couple emails per week that you might get. Yeah? So TELUS is a telco. That is true. But since the early 2000s, TELUS has made an intentional effort to become a tech company. And it puts its money where its mouth is. Just up here, you'll see the different divisions and different groups within TELUS. You have TELUS Consumer that sells mobility, home internet, home security. That's to consumers for people like you and me, and for our home use and our family use. You have TELUS Business that's really focused around providing services to businesses. That could be everything from core telecom to cybersecurity. Right? There's lots of different services for businesses as well. But that's the core telco part of it. TELUS, many years ago, started thinking in what they should invest in on the technology side. And so they started TELUS International. And TELUS International is the result of several acquisitions TELUS made in the software development, machine learning, artificial intelligence, business process outsourcing. TELUS International actually IPO'd a couple of years ago here in Canada, a very successful IPO. And they're actually the largest part of TELUS. They're in many countries across the globe and provide lots of businesses like Uber with services. Some of the top brands in the world use TELUS International. Not many people know that. Then we have TELUS Health. Maybe you've run across this when you go to your doctor's office and all of a sudden he's wearing a badge and there's a little TELUS logo and he swipes it through his computer and he can pull up medical records. About 14 years ago, TELUS wanted to make an investment into something that had a really deep social purpose. And health was one of the first things that came up. A very fragmented industry. You'd take a folder to your doctor's office. You'd go into a clinic. You have to bring the results for your doctor to see. Your doctor would prescribe something. You'd go to the pharmacy to maybe fill that prescription. And what would happen? Oh, your insurance plan doesn't cover it. You'd have to pay out of pocket and all these other things that weren't really ideal. So TELUS made several investments in the area. And today, TELUS services over 70% of electronic medical records in Canada. They've connected hospitals, pharmacies, doctors' offices, insurance providers, and everyone in that middle. They've built a data exchange. They encrypt, secure, move data to enable better health outcomes. And again, not many people know that about TELUS. And the next part, whenever I show up at trade shows and we're under the banner of TELUS Agriculture and people come up to me with their phones for me to change some sort of setting, I have to explain, that's not what I'm doing. I can try and help, but not in the official capacity. But TELUS Agriculture is very much a mirror of the health journey. An industry where systems aren't connected, where agribusinesses don't necessarily connect digitally to farms and ranches. Farms and ranches don't connect digitally down to food and consumer packaged goods. So TELUS has made about 12 acquisitions in the last 4 years inside of the agriculture space to try and start building those connections end-to-end inside of agriculture. And I joined, as Heather said, 4 years ago when everything was just an idea on a slide deck. Fast forward today, TELUS Agriculture and its investments in agriculture represent over 1,500 new employees that TELUS has added in this space. Customers in over 50 countries and offices in about 12, and continuing to grow. So TELUS has made significant bets into these spaces and not just wanting to sell people cell phones. So I'm not going to be trying to push any kind of core telco on you guys, just trying to educate and set the lay of the land. Why am I here today? Because I'm in that bottom bit and we're part of the team that's investing in agriculture. So what is IoT? Well, it's an acronym. We need more acronyms in this life, right? At least at TELUS, it seems that we have, every meeting I go to, I learn a new acronym. But IoT is a pretty standard one. IoT just means Internet of Things, right? It's a shorter way instead of saying Internet of Things. Who here has a Fitbit or a smartwatch or an Apple Watch? Please raise your hand. You are an adopter of IoT. Who here has a TV that connects to the internet somehow? Please raise your hand. Oh, see, lots of people. You are using IoT. So Internet of Things means anything that's a connected device that collects and exchanges data without any human intervention directly, right? Each IoT device has unique IDs, communicates directly to the cloud, or it can send a signal to another device that then sends it up to the cloud. As I just mentioned, smart TVs, Fitbits, if anybody has an Alexa or a smart thermostat, you've already started adopting IoT. Well, maybe more familiar, irrigation systems many times are also IoT devices, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in ag. But what's the daily impact that we see IoT having in our normal lives, right? Day-to-day consumer family, right? Drives efficiencies, it maybe reduces human error, can improve productivity, and the last one's really important, it can improve decision-making through data insights. So IoT is something you're going to hear about if you're in business, and especially now in agriculture, it's really going to hit us hard in the next couple of years because it helps facilitate automation. For many of the repetitive work that sometimes we have to do, as an example, we're talking to a company in Australia who has a device for measuring water for cattle, and they're just talking about, hey, you know what happens nowadays? We're talking to farmers in California, Australia, ranchers in Alberta. Lots of them get on the truck and go check water sometimes, right? Can IoT devices help? Absolutely. Can they help you manage things remotely? Yes. They're very important because they allow you to manage something without being there. And they allow you to see data in real time. Yesterday, Stuart was gave a really good lecture on financial literacy, right? The next wave is data literacy. So you're going to need to have a profitable, successful farm operation. Your data, not just your financial data, but your operational data is going to have to play a significant part in the future of your farm. There are many drivers for adoption for IoT and technology inside of ag. This is no news to anybody, right? Like, you guys are hit by news around environmental conditions, the increase in food demand, if you have any sort of irrigation or animal production and water usage is a big thing depending on the regions that you're at. And all these things that are happening around the world are driving farmers to adopt technology, are impacting production in farm and ranch, and are going to be pushing from the outside in the adoption of technology and IoT. So it was really interesting. I was reading the RBC Green Economy Report. Where's Ryan? Is he still around? Anyway, I was going through that, and it was just rehashing and emphasizing the need for us to, in Canada, to grow our production by 25% by 2030, I believe, or sorry, 2050, to match consumption around the world. That's quite a bit. And things that are driving adoption on the farm. So you hear a lot about precision agriculture, the pressures around sustainability, measuring your footprint, or that's the current hot word today is like sustainability, carbon, right? Traceability, enabling traceability, new revenue generation, finding new ways to actually drive revenue for your farm and your farm operation. Technology needs to play a part in that. Data collection, whether it's soil moisture, your weather, machine telematics, on-farm grain inventories. These are all things that IoT can enable. And they can help farms, they can help ranches, they can help you move along into another wave of the digital transformation that is hitting farms and ranches today. So where you have proactive decision making, where you're getting real-time indicators, real-time data from these devices that can actually inform what you're doing today. Stuart actually yesterday also made the point, the financial reports show you kind of what happened, right? You need something to overlay against that and say, okay, what is happening now in my operation? And so there's going to be a way to make better informed decisions, improve farm productivity and yields, and also save time and money. So let's talk about some specific IoT farm applications. There are several that are more mature that farmers have been using for a while already. So farmers are not we're never accusing any farm and ranch of not having technology on the farm. That's not the case. However, you have a bunch of disparate solutions that don't talk to each other today. You don't have them connected to many other systems or your farm management systems. But you see many examples of IoT on farm today. You have, for example, on the fleet equipment and telematics side, probably one of the most advanced side of IoT on farm today is the machine communication, the remote support that you can actually get in some of the newest equipment, the way that it is autonomous, self-driving, all of that is based on connectivity, right? And that device or that equipment being connected. You have live coverage and productivity analysis that happens as you are, let's say, harvesting. You can see in real time based on the sensors that are on that equipment. You have asset inventory and commodity monitoring, which is probably familiar to many people here that have some sort of inventory monitoring or bin management system already on their farm. Asset tracking, logistics, building and home automation. I mentioned irrigation control already. Big one, very common. Farmers today are already adopting weather stations. And weather stations are only going to get better. They're going to get more affordable. And they're going to drive deeper insights. And in an age where there's so much uncertainty hitting the farm, why not embrace certainty with IoT devices, with real-time data, real-time analytics that's available for yourself. Worker safety. This is an area that's growing. It's really important to see this discussion around mental health on farm and worker safety and all the organizations that are popping up. We're super happy to see this happening in the space. And there's IoT devices that can also support farmers and ranchers there with fall detection, alerting. If you're by yourself and you get into an accident, your cell phone or whatever it is in your truck, or you're by yourself, there's, you can call for help, panic buttons, all those sorts of things. These are all IoT devices that can actually make a difference on the farm. In the future, we're going to see a lot of geofencing as well, especially on the animal side. How is IoT going to play a part in that as well? And final piece, all of this needs to culminate somewhere. Lots of data without actually driving insights or analytics is useless data. There's a lot of data sitting out there, but it's not being utilized. And IoT is actually going to improve that as IoT solutions get better, as they integrate. You're going to see real-time analytics, predictive outcomes, improving business performance for your farm. That's not to say it's not pie in the sky, everything's perfect. There are challenges with IoT. It's not going to be smooth adoption curve, because there are some physical limitations and other things that get in the way. One is sensing in remote environments. And we all know farms have great connectivity, right? Like they're not remote at all, right? You're not like an hour away, an hour and a half from, a fire station or police or all these other things. Farming is, and farm ranching happens in remote areas. We need to acknowledge that. So there's a layer that, that adds the barrier to adoption. And as connectivity improves, and we'll talk about that, and I'm sure there are going to be questions about that, which we can answer, we're going to see that barrier being removed. Harsh climates, they also can affect, right? Machinery does not like to work very well in the cold, or charging a battery for a device when it's minus 30 or minus 35 is a challenge. And technology is improving, and we're finding different ways to make that happen. But if you're going to have outdoor devices in rural Canada, it needs to be able to be weatherproof, right? Rough terrain, sending signals, if it's down in a gully, all that physics of connectivity can also be a bit of a challenge. But there are ways around it. Cloud and security. You need to have end-to-end cloud service, be able to actually send that data up to the cloud, have that ingested into some sort of platform so you can use the data. There needs to be a big effort by all the companies that are providing IoT on having cybersecurity and protecting user information. There are today lots of IoT devices that are being sold out there that have not gone through critical review of their security elements. You need to protect the output of that data as well if it's important or sensitive to your information. Complexity and cost. This is a big one. Farmers and ranchers have been peddled and sold all sorts of gadgets in the past. A lot of it, hey, this is a really cool urban solution. It should work on the farm. And you know what? It doesn't. It needs to be tested. It needs to be simple to use. It needs to be tried and true. It needs to be, have a return on investment, a very clear return on investment. If anybody is peddling IoT to farmers and ranchers and it's just for the sake of technology, they're going to fail. It needs to have a really valid use case, simple adoption, simple to understand, simple to use, because it is something new. It's part of the digital transformation. It needs to make sense and work and have a proven investment for the farmer to say, hey, I'm going to actually adopt this new technology to get a clear return on my investment. Connectivity and power is also another challenge that IoT faces. And whether that's cellular, satellite, Wi-Fi, there are ways to work to make sure the devices stay connected. You can have actually devices that work off of a cell coverage, but they can also have a satellite connection to the internet, which would work in remote areas where you're not actually getting cell signal. And so you can actually build devices and how you build it to overcome some of these challenges. They can be wired, they can be wireless. Again, the charging, recharging options depends on the device. If you have a device that uses a lot of data, like let's say a camera, you want to put a video camera outside that's all ingesting and sending in a lot of data, it's going to consume more power. So depending on the use case of the IoT device that you're trying to actually put on your farm, you're going to need different requirements for power, for internet bandwidth. So there are several solutions and options on that side. Maybe this will be a little bit techie, but I'm not a telco don't have a telco background. I'm not going to be able to explain to you how a cellular network actually works, but I can try and talk through what it is. There are several different types of connectivity. We're very used to the Bluetooth, right? In some parts of the world, LoRaWAN is being utilized to connect devices. The most common one that we have is Wi-Fi, right? And then we have satellite. So that's outside the cellular network. Those are different ways that you can connect devices, either to each other or to something that is then connected to the cloud. On the left side, it sends less data, and it's got slower download speeds. When you go all the way to the right side, your speeds increase, you have more data, and larger files can be transferred. In terms of IoT products usually are within that cellular network or within satellite, especially in farming, that drives their connectivity. So NB-IoT, LTE-M, and just regular LTE are different types of signal that these IoT devices can connect to. We hear a lot of talk around 5G. Oh, 5G. Either really bad, on some theories around that, or it's just like it's going to change the world. Actually, 5G is just another mode of connectivity. The only thing that it's going to do and bring or change is that it can actually move more data at faster speeds and is going to open up and enable different use cases. So as 5G expands, we're going to be seeing new use cases for farms, for cities, for any municipalities, for governments expand, where before you had devices that couldn't send as much data, but now they can actually get more data, send more data, get it back, have it processed, and insights spit out in microseconds. That's what 5G is really going to enable. Also, 5G is easier to replicate or extend signals than other types of connectivity. It's actually less costly to do so with a 5G signal than it was, for example, with a regular cell phone tower for 4G. And so what you'll see end up happening is that we're going to be able to propagate connectivity farther and into newer places. That's what the 5G investment is going to do. But I'm sure there might be questions about that. That was just a little bit about the connectivity options. All right. Hopefully that gives you a bit of background on what IoT is, some of the challenges that there are for adoption, some of the outside pressures that are bringing in. What do we foresee? What do we call out as being the future with IoT in farms and ranches? So we're going to see that farms will continue to digitize. Our research shows that in Canada, slightly over only half of the farms, about 55%, actually are using a farm management system. There's a lot of farms being run today on Excel, on a notebook, on Ledger, or just up here, right? And that's going to change as farms digitize, as there's a new generation taking over, wanting to make more quicker decisions with real-time data. You're going to need to be centralizing your farm operation on the cloud. And IoT is going to plug into that. Robotics and autonomous machinery, they will become more common. You're already seeing it. It seems a little pie in the sky sometimes, but it's happening. You've seen, what DOT was doing, and I know they've been acquired, but like John Deere and Case and all these companies, they're driving into the automated section. Robotics is going to really show up, especially as 5G and stronger and faster connectivity rolls out. In the long term, you're going to see automation in your farm production increase and might even alter your farm labor requirements, depending on what technologies actually are successful in the long run. You're going to see benefits come to farmers by this adoption of technology, where banks, grain companies, insurers are actually going to reward the farm and the ranch for managing their system or their farm in a system when they're using devices that are informing their operation, when they can actually track and trace and score what's happening on the farm. You're going to see better lending rates. You're going to see better insurance rates. You're going to see probably maybe some better grain prices depending on the programs that the grain companies, the buyers and the processors and aggregators roll out. But that's part of this digital transformation. And like I said before, data literacy, much like financial literacy, is going to be critical for farm success. You're also going to see the advancement of the networks and core infrastructure. So TELUS made an announcement earlier this year about a $70 billion investment, $16 billion in Alberta, to really connect more homes, more businesses, and roll out connectivity for rural, for Indigenous communities, and a lot of the remote people that live in remote locations across Canada. So you're going to see that, not just by TELUS, but by the government, by other telcos. There's a real strong push to empower farms and ranches with more connectivity, with more technology, and with better access to improving their farm management, which is why we're here today, to learn more about our farm management best practices and what the future looks like. Maybe I'll actually save this one to answer a question. All right. So that wraps it up. I'm going to give it over to Heather, I think, for questions, to assist with questions if anybody does have questions. But thank you so much for the opportunity today to talk a little bit about IoT, what's happening, and where it's going to show up on your farm. So thank you.
That's what I dropped, the pen. Scooted under there. Oh, thanks. It's a nice part of not wearing a dress. Thanks so much, Daniel. That was an awesome presentation, and thanks to Decisive Farming by TELUS Agriculture, and of course TELUS Agriculture in general, for bringing you here today and for all the support you have for us and for this conference. So we'll just take a moment. If you scan the QR code with your phone, it'll take you to our Menti meter, and you can ask Daniel all the questions that you like, because we have a lot of time left, around 20 minutes. So have at it. Ask all your IoT questions, your SaaS questions, your 5G questions, 10G.
10G, one day. Yeah. It might be called something else by then. By the way, was reading a Forbes article recently, and they're estimating that there are going to be 43 billion with a B devices connected to the internet by the end of next year. That's about, if you get the average population of the Earth, that's about 5 per person as a ratio. And that's only going to increase. That's already triple what it was 4 years ago. That's how fast connected devices and IoT are growing in our day-to-day. And sometimes we don't even notice, but it's a growing industry.
You've got a question in front of you and 4 more after that, so go ahead.
Thoughts on Starlink? Is Elon going to Twitter that away, or is it the key to rural connectivity? It's got definitely a part to play. Starlink is going to have some of its challenges, but it's also going to bring a lot of good as well. So I think there are going to be partnership opportunities for Starlink with telcos as well, and how they bring their service to market. But it has a part to play, for sure. It's still, satellite internet is never going to be as fast as fiber internet, or not in our lifetime at least, in the next 40, 50 years. But so if we can get to a point where we can actually roll out fiber to most of the country, and that takes a lot of capital investment, government support's required, then Starlink might be able to play a part in areas where the telcos can't or aren't able to get connectivity to. But it's not necessarily the final solution, but it does have a part to play. I'm not sure if it's going to Twitter it away. What Elon's doing with Twitter is different than what's happening with Tesla, I think, and his other investments.
Are you good with the questions? Because
I
can give you all the stage and back to your show. Okay. All right.
Okay. Do you want?
There's
okay.
like 12 there, so just go nuts.
Go nuts. All right.
You don't even have to click anything.
What IoT products can you see most significantly influencing livestock producers? Oh, great question. I think you can break down the IoT products available on the animal side in a couple of different segments. Animal health is probably one, tracking animal health, but also IoT solutions that track animal behavior. Strong correlation between their health and their behavior, how many times they're going to the water or where they are on the pen and things like that. You're actually going to see, and there are lots of companies, startups working exactly on this. How do we track the movement of animals, even in, like, let's say in a feedlot? They have strong correlations between where it is on actually the feedlot plot, how it's been moving, to say, okay, someone needs to check that animal or not. And you're actually going to have software systems and applications that are going to say, hey, go check this animal, and give you the exact location. Now, technology and precision location technology is still kind of developing, but that's one area where you're going to see. One is animal health, measuring live temperature, giving you insights. The other one's tracking their movement and their behavior, how many times they went to get water, et cetera. You're going to see geofencing or virtual fencing products come up, where there's going to be technology that avoids the cattle or keeps the cattle inside without actual real fences or electric fences. So those are kind of three of the ones that I see significantly influencing livestock producers. If you get into the animal side and then you're looking at dairies, then it's a whole other kind of technology stack. And dairies have been adopting IoT for many, many years. They have the benefit of having animals, in close quarters, usually with some sort of internet connectivity already established and not necessarily outside. So there's some nuances there. Can I share more about the partnership with Decisive? Okay. Decisive Farming was one of the companies that TELUS acquired. Part of the mandate for TELUS is, how can we service farms and ranches in Canada holistically? Not just with, hey, here's a mobile phone plan for farms. Great, that's good, that's necessary. We need to provide farmers and ranchers with that. But also, how do we service all their needs on technology? So TELUS acquired Decisive Farming, which offers precision agronomy services. So they have agronomists that work with you and their teams to build variable rate prescriptions, help you with adopting variable rates, and they also have commodity marketing products in a partnership with StoneX and a product called No Risk. They help build crop plans, give you harvest insights, and so really is an on-farm, boots on the ground. We see that. We need boots on the ground, and Decisive Farming is a TELUS company, and they're kind of at the forefront of that. And they have a farm management application, which is also something we're going to build all the connections for IoT devices in so that farmers can have information in one place. What can farmers do today to prepare themselves for future IoT opportunities that will become available to them through the future connectivity improvements? Well, a couple things. Every farm is different, right, with regards to its layout, to its operation. There are, let's say, you also have your farm personality. Some people are really they just want to try things out, willing to adopt. So if you're that kind of person, hey, work with these companies that are bringing technology and start testing them out. As for example, here at TELUS, we're putting together a farm advisory panel. We'd love to have farmers that want to test things out and try things on the farm, give us feedback. Hey, it's not working. This is good about it. This is negative about it. So that there's opportunity that's not just TELUS is doing. But if anyone is interested in that, look for me later. We'll get you hooked up. But that's one of the things that you can do. You can start looking at the people or the different companies that are bringing technology to the farm and seeing what they're doing and if there's the opportunity to test. Second is there's some really basic IoT solutions that you can start adopting. As an example, that worker safety product. How many of you here farm actually, run a farm or a ranch? How many times have you been out working alone? Hundreds of times, thousands of times, right? Start getting used to technology, start adopting the simple things. is that a fall detection device, a worker safety product that you can actually call for help, even if you're outside of cellular connectivity. There are some that have satellite. Those start adopting technology and the small things that actually have an impact on your family and well-being and health. And you're going to get more familiar with technology. You're going to understand how it works. You're going to test it out. And that maybe starts you on, okay, now I can test something out. Okay, now this connects to a farm management platform. I can actually see where my husband, where my wife, where my son, where my worker is on the farm. And if they're okay, I can actually try and reach out if I don't see any movement for a while. Like, there are different things that you can then start using to adopt technology and get ready for IoT. The other thing is try to think through connectivity on your farm and reach out to whoever provides connectivity in your area, right? And whether, hopefully that's TELUS. But if it's not, it's smart to start thinking, okay, how do I get connectivity out to my yard? How do I get connectivity out to fields and barns and all these other things? So that's probably one of the most important things to start thinking through and getting help with. So, will we see TELUS Ag loop in TELUS Health or other TELUS companies provide farmers? Yes, absolutely. TELUS made significant investments into the health. Even most recently, TELUS acquired a company called LifeWorks. And what LifeWorks does, they have a whole platform, and they connect psychologists, psychotherapists, psychiatrists, and anybody who can help with mental health, suicide prevention. They have platforms and services that they offer for that. The farmer doesn't pay anything. As an example, LifeWorks has a partnership with Ontario Federation of Agriculture, providing those services as well, free for farmers. And it's federally and provincially funded. What you're going to see is a big push on how can we make that national? How can TELUS help make that national and support farmers and ranchers that way so that there can be an increased adoption on the health side? That was just mental health suicide awareness, but TELUS already does have TELUS MyCare, which is an app where you can book doctors' consultations if you're in remote areas, and all of this is available to you today. So yes, you will see a lot more focused effort on supporting farmers with their health. How can young producers returning to the farm help their parents with their digital literacy? I can get in trouble with this one. No. I think your parents, everyone's parents has different personalities. Like my parents, I can't get them off technology. They're worse than teenagers. When they come visit, then you're like, okay, get off your phone, get off your, right? Like let's actually be. So it just depends. But if you're having trouble, like a lot of them will. It takes you to adopt it and show the benefit first of something, and you trialing. And you're saying, hey, mom, dad, I want to try this out first. Can you bear with me? And actually, having an intentional effort of you showing the benefits of it. It's not I told you so. You can't argue with data. That's the problem. If you actually have data, if you can show A plus B equals C, there's very little arguing that can be had. So that I think there's skepticism because lots of technology has been sold to farms and ranches in the past, hasn't worked, hasn't been supported, has been flash in the pan. So your parents are probably really skeptical. Lots of people have knocked on their door trying to sell them cool stuff in the past. That's warranted. has happened, right? So you just gotta be understanding with that, but also show the benefits so try one thing out, try another thing out. If you think that, it's bin monitoring solution that's not, that's affordable, would make sense. Hey, let's try it on one bin. Let's actually test this out, see if this helps. Hey, that's one thing, and then you can actually show them the data, track it. If you can find things that actually save them time and actually give them time to do things that they enjoy. If your dad is to, drive around checking on stuff all day, and if you can find a way to have sensors that say, hey, dad, you can actually sit down, have a coffee, and do this other thing that you prefer to do instead. Like, go with the animals instead of like checking all this time and wasting 45 minutes, an hour driving around. Like those are the things I think that you can do to help win your parents over. But it's not going to be a flip the switch. Hey, they're going to adopt technology too. Will ag IoT products talk to each other no matter the brand? Or will you need to ensure all IoT products are made by the same company? Yeah, today you see very many closed ecosystems. So companies that are providing technology usually have an ulterior motive today. So there's good that their technology is bringing, but it's always tied to something. We need a neutral players to step in, and we need this whole closed ecosystem mentality to disappear. So I can say from the TELUS side, what we're doing, we want to be connected to everything. So if we're not forcing a farmer to use XYZ, we have our platform, we have our solutions, it'll talk to our solutions, but you have something else, how can we integrate? How can we have that feeding in? That's going to be one of the biggest things that's going to break barrier to adoption, if that can happen. But you're going to need companies and other businesses to start thinking like that. For example, today, green does not talk to red. Red does not talk to green. No matter where you are on your preferences on your farm, that's just the case, right? Until somebody comes in the middle that can actually unite these things and make it happen, and you're not bound by one of those, that's going to have to change. But you'll see that happening, I think, and more IoT on the IoT side. I think it'll be quicker than some of the other bigger stuff. You're going to see be able to connect to different systems and solutions. You mentioned digital farming will further grow. From your perspective, how many farms will use a digital farming solution like FieldView in 5 years? How many acres will be covered? So if you look at the curve in terms of FieldView, any of the other farm management apps like Farm Ahead, Decisive Farming, et cetera. If you look at Stratus reports, there's a bunch. That is on the curve. Like that growth adoption is happening now. Actually, I'll actually use this opportunity to go back and answer the, how do you show your parents or how do you get them on the road to digital transformation? Finding a solution to manage your farm and actually starting to put your records in and tracking things on there is probably one of the easiest things to do and best things that you can do for succession, for tech adoption. Start showing, hey, you can actually see how much you have in your grain bins here, what contracts you have, and you have that all centralized. That's probably one thing if your farm hasn't done that yet. But you can see the adoption growing. So before, I think 4 years ago, it was less than 50%. Now we're at 55%. As we get push on, let's say, okay, now government's saying you got to reduce nitrogen. How are you going to track that? You're going to need some sort of system. You're going to need to have something that's auditable. How's that going to work? So I think there's going to be a lot of pressures for farmers to adopt farm management systems from the outside, but also it makes sense from the inside. How do you manage your operation better? So I'm not going to give a guess on how many acres will be covered, but if we can get that adoption to 75, 80 in the next 3 years, that's amazing. Anything else?
Yep.
All right. Well, at least it took the 8th question to talk about connectivity. Really great question. The connectivity that IoT devices use is not always the same as your LTE, your tower. In Canada, you have, not in Canada, in the world, you have spectrum. So how does spectrum work? This is probably something important to talk about. The government says, okay, you can actually send signals in this band of radio waves, right? And they'll split it out. So IoT devices are usually in a separate spectrum than our regular 5G IoT. And with 5G, you can split that out even more. So what may be happening is that it's not necessarily the farm IoT devices or other IoT devices that are drawing, is more people are actually using whatever spectrum there is, more people streaming Netflix, watching YouTube, all those sorts of things, and that will impact connectivity more than IoT devices. So maybe just split the question. But yeah, so as I said, it's not an easy fix. Actually, Canada has one of the most expensive spectrums in the world. It's all blind bid. You have to go and you say, hey, I want to provide connectivity. It's billions upon billions upon billions of dollars that you spend to actually bid on that spectrum. Then, not only do you bid on the spectrum, and this is not just us, all telcos, okay? All Canadian telcos have some of the highest pricing that you actually pay for spectrum. And then, putting up infrastructure is not cheap. It costs today about $1 million, let's say, give or take, to put up a tower somewhere. And in the past, I don't have my phone with me, how's a business case, like, okay, we spent this much in spectrum, now we're going to build those many towers, how many devices or cell phones do we need to connect to actually not lose money in this whole operation? And so before, business cases for telcos were just on how many phones am I actually going to light up. That conversation is changing. It's not necessarily how many more phones how many IoT devices am I going to enable? How many acres am I going to be able to line up? And so that's changing. And that helps with telcos to go and say, okay, actually let's build out, more infrastructure in rural areas, because now we actually can, make it work. But once you put a tower up there, you don't just leave the tower. You need to hire service people to make sure the tower is up and operating. If there's an issue, that they can go there and support. So there's ongoing investments. It's not a quick and easy solution for fixing that. I live and work in southern Manitoba and regularly travel through regions that don't have adequate cell coverage. Will 5G investments solve this? Can I ask the media team? I had the last slide has a map on it. Can you guys pull it up? This will help answer. The answer, so layered question, but yes, 5G will help some of this if there are 5G builds in the next couple of years. Like in the long run, as more builds, yes, eventually we'll solve. But there's a investment that happens by telcos in a specific region. I'm putting this map up. It's more educational than anything else, and it's not a cop-out. But they're what we call legacy territories. So TELUS's legacy territories is everything that's in purple there. And TELUS has a network alliance with SaskTel and Bell. So we have legacy territories. So TELUS is responsible for building in the infrastructure, any tower, anything in anything that's purple. So some regions of Ontario, Quebec, very small, but mainly Alberta and BC. So if you're in southern Manitoba, for the most part, other than that little purple shaded area there, Bell is our partner that needs to, that's their 5G rollout and build plan is the one that's going to dictate whether or not your territory actually gets more coverage or not. So I can't speak specifically to that, but since most of us here, or however it's taking place in Alberta, BC, that's definitely on us. And as I already mentioned, we've made some pretty significant investments to try and get there, but it takes time. You need government permits, you need build permits, and all those sorts of things. All right. Got 1 minute left, or we're done?
Yeah, you can have a minute.
Is there another question, or is that it?
I think we're going to
roll it
over there.
Okay.
Wait, if you have something final to say?
No. Thank you very much. Appreciate all the questions, and hopefully you guys got answers, even though some of it is wait and see. But thank you very much. Have a good rest of the conference.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Daniel. That was great. Thanks, Daniel. That was an awesome presentation. Got us thinking about a lot of things, and more so about how digital technology connects with and has an impact on and is impacted by business management and making management decisions. But I also kind of liked the connectivity that we had to, farm safety as well and mental health, and being able to kind of alert people if you're in trouble. I think that's pretty cool. So thanks so much again to Decisive Farming by TELUS Agriculture for helping sponsor this conference and bringing Daniel to us.